thank you very much. First of all, thank you for your leadership here in East
Thank you.
Orange on so many things that we have come through East Orange to dramatize and highlight. We appreciate your leadership very much so, and it's
Thank
always
you.
great to be with the Assemblywoman who is a force in her own right in the New Jersey Assembly. And I appreciate all of the moms joining us as well as the director. So this is a topic that talks about economic security for millions of New Jerseyans, which is the skyrocketing cost of childcare. So let me start by thanking Ms. Winifred Smith-Jenkins for hosting us and opening up her classrooms and allowing us to hold this discussion at Zadie's today. And I also want to thank the Advocates for Children of New Jersey for joining us and for their leadership in this space. And of course, to Ms. Grove, Ms. Allen, and Ms. Ross for taking the time to be here and to talk about some of their own experiences. As everyone knows, the word that could most accurately describe the state of child care in America today is a word: crisis. Between soaring costs, lack of availability, staff shortages, and more, an industry that was barely limping before is now collapsing before our eyes. The solution is that we must treat early childhood education like a public good, something that is the birthright of every child, regardless of the zip code that they are born into. And like any other safety net, it has to work to be composed of several strands working together, from universal pre-K to subsidies for providers to support for family child care centers. You know, we say that that children are our most important precious asset, but we don't necessarily have policies that always follow that most precious asset. This is a both and not an either or situation. And I've been proud to carry the torch alongside a champion for New Jersey families in the House, Representative Mickey Sherrill, as we fight to bolster child care in the comprehensive manner that it deserves. A working mom of four herself, she is also served as a lieutenant colonel in the Navy, and as an assistant U.S. attorney for New Jersey, she understands how essential the care economy is and how the current child care is a crisis of productivity. One that affects older Americans who provide unpaid child care, parents who exit the labor market, and kids who fall behind because families just simply can't afford the care. This is an intergenerational challenge. And combating this, of course, starts with funding, including the $39 billion that last year's American Rescue Plan set aside for child care. Our state alone received nearly $700 million, and I was glad to see Governor Murphy announce that he will put it to use through grants, direct aid, recruitment and retention bonuses for child care staff. One of the conversations we were having with you is that, in fact, part of the challenge is being able to pay for the staff, that you can attract that type of staff so that children can be in those classrooms. It also includes passing legislation that I am co-sponsoring with Senator Patty Murray. She is the chairwoman of the Health, Education, and Labor Committee, that would ensure that any family making under $213,000, anybody here in that? No. Believe it or not, neither am I. Would pay no more than 7% of their income on child care. This is in line with President Biden's plan in the Build Back Better Act, which would save a typical family in New Jersey as much as $27,000 on expenses. Now, while we have conversations ongoing as to what the budget reconciliation bill, all that means is it's a procedure, but bottom line, it's part of our ultimate budget bill, will look like, I want you to know that we're going to push as hard as possible to make sure that any final bill includes the priorities that we'll talk about today. It simply cannot be overstated how much this transformational investment would mean for parents across our state, but particularly for those in black and brown communities who disproportionately struggle to make ends meet when it comes to child care. After all, there isn't a parent today, certainly not a parent here with us today, who thinks our child care system is working the way it should be. Over the past 2 decades, costs have more than doubled while wages have flattened. which means that right now, the average working family is spending anywhere between 15 to 35% of their paycheck for childcare. Think about that. 15 to 35% for childcare so that you can go work, but you lose maybe up to 35% right off the bat because you need to have your child taken care of. So that means about a third of your income is already gone. That's before we talk about housing costs and other challenges. While these challenges certainly existed pre-COVID, they have only become more dire in the last 2 years as 92 licensed child care centers in New Jersey have had to close since the beginning of the pandemic. Many of them local, small businesses that were also essential parts of our community. And while these numbers are essential context for our discussion, the fact remains that the issue of child care is one best told in stories. It's in the moms who talk about the impossible choice between giving their child the head start in their education or affording basic necessities for the family. It is in the parents who tell me they want to go back to work, but they can't find or can't afford to have someone look after their children and haven't returned yet. And we have nearly 11 million jobs in our country. Imagine that, jobs that are being unfulfilled, in great part because many women cannot return to the workplace because they can't find and or afford child care for their children. It's also in the emails, letters, and phone calls that we receive which motivate me to work as hard as we can to ease the burden that child care and early childhood education is putting on families. We can start to fix this collapsing system by making critical investments in our nation's child care infrastructure. We can cap costs once and for all so that the only decision a parent will have to make is whether to send their kids to a high-quality provider down the street or the one up the road. And for moms like Lauren, Yolma, and Janelle, who we'll hear from today, we can remove the barriers that keep them from starting a business or going back to school. I'm a firm believer that there is no better investment, no better way to unlock our nation's potential and strengthen our economic recovery than the support programs that support our families and their children. That is why we're here today, and I look forward to getting into it and hearing from all of you. And before I do, I just wanted to ask the Assemblywoman Timberlake, to say a few words, but let me just say before I formally introduce her that I started a public daycare. It was award-winning when I was the mayor of Union City. Mm-hmm. And it was an intergenerational approach. We had, grandmothers who were looking to find fulfillment in their life. We taught them, we got them certified as the first child care workers, and we had young children, and we had these grandmothers taking care of them as trained, and then we had mothers who were looking to break the cycle of dependency, and we trained them at the center as well. And so we had this whole intergenerational approach, the children, the parents, the grandparents who were working. And I was fortunate that I took, since I lived in town, of course I paid more, but I took the children, my children, to daycare. And I saw the difference that it made and how they unlocked their potential early on, how they learned, how they interacted, the socialization with other children who were all different. And so it was an enormous experience that I've never forgotten, that instructs me as we meet this challenge today. So with that, it's great to be advocating at the federal level, but it's great to have colleagues at the state level in Trenton that are advocating for us. So Assemblywoman Timberlake, would you please?
Thank you so much.